Here we find the semi-arid steppe over on the left-hand side, indicating it's quite dry. The area in the western part of the United States that is kind of a very light green, almost white colored shaded area would be our semi-arid steppe climate region. Key to understanding a semi-arid steppe climate is it's very much a transition zone for, especially in the United States, from the very dry areas, the deserts, i.e. the southwest, to more of the humid forest land areas you'd find along the east coast. And so the semi-arid steppe we find in the Great Plains and a good amount of the Rocky Mountains. One of the things you'll note here is steppe is Russian for short grassland, indicating the vegetation type here. So we're going to get a little bit more vegetation than a desert, but definitely not as much as we're going to find here in Indiana and more of the humid climates to the east here in the United States. But one of the things is this climate does produce a good amount of wheat. So it's also referred to as the breadbasket of the world, this particular climate region. We know that because grain, even livestock, which is, I guess, another form of food, is plentiful amounts here. And it's a lot of this is the wide open spaces we find here. So you see a lot of large grazing animals, i.e. the buffalo. So one of the things, like I said, this is very much a transition zone from the deserts of the world, the tropical deserts of the United States, to more of the humid climates we find with forest lands. So we'll find these at the peripheries of deserts and steppes. They surround arid areas, and so steppe climates, one of the things is they're either rain shadow effect, which created the quite dry conditions, or a subtropical high pressure for a good amount of the year. Like I said, a little bit more precipitation and thus vegetation than deserts, but definitely not as much as we find further to the east. So if you've ever been to Las Vegas, or if you've been to Denver, or much of Colorado that's not highland areas, you're going to find a semi-arid steppe climate. Now comparing a semi-arid steppe climate to a tropical desert, you'll notice the tropical desert has a much higher temperature as far as its highest temperature found, and that's because it's latitudinally going to be closer to the equator than a semi-arid steppe climate. But one of the things you note, like I said, steppe climates do get a little bit more precipitation, a little bit more consistent precipitation, but like I said, subtropical high pressure does do a good amount of influencing the dry conditions that are found here. One thing to note is why in the one on the right, the temperature is lowest there in June and July, whereas in the other one, the highest is in June and July. It's simply because the one on the right hand is in the southern hemisphere. So the ones that have a high point in June and July, just like here in Indiana, where obviously our warmest temperatures in the summertime. So that's an indicator, just by looking at these with the hemisphere, that the temperature, the climate graph is located. Here we see where the buffalo roam. So one of the things is the animals over time have adapted to the prairie environment here, and so you've got the very dry but very windy, few trees and shrubs. So you have to have animals that can withstand temperature differences, so very cool nights, very warm days, but also warm summers and cool, very cool winters. And so you have to have animals that can withstand all of that. And the buffalo are very hardy in terms of being able to adapt to this very harsh climate. So typically it's the large grazing animals, the ones we see dominate here. Some have argued that the most altered physical landscape anywhere on Earth is the Great Plains, so which was at one time nothing but miles and miles of prairies and natural grasslands. Of course, now is lots of ag, lots of wheat, lots of corn, all kinds of stuff. And so one of the things we note about this area is that it's actually tough to actually penetrate the soil and to churn it. But this guy here actually figured it out. This guy here, his last name is Deere, first name John, who of course is famous for his various products that he produces still today. Of course, he's long gone, but his name is still attached to the company. But here we see a sign that indicates the plow that broke the plains. Another key invention to helping this area become human-altered heavily is the invention of barbed wire. And so one of the things is in a treeless area, you really couldn't provide a natural barrier for your livestock, to keep your livestock in. And so barbed wire, which then could be spread out over a large area around a large prairie property, could then allow those grazing animals to go wherever they want, but still keep them in. Further helping to alter this area is the fact that the railroads made it no longer was it the Great Plains, this unreachable area in which it was too difficult to get to. And so, of course, with rail, you could then bring people, but of course, you could bring products and largely agriculture. And so, once again, altering this area, which, once again, is human impact on the environment, something we're going to come back to at the end of the semester. And so, understanding, well, why is this area so altered? Well, railroad also played a key role. However, one of the complexities is we got a very much agriculturally productive area, but like I said, it's kind of dry. Doesn't get that much vegetation. So where do they get a lot of the water for the surface and for crops? Actually, from underwater. So that technology actually came from oil drillers from Pennsylvania, brought within their technology to what they call the Ogallala Aquifer, which is essentially this underwater, we'll call it a lake, this area, this water body, that is essentially fresh water that's been tapped, and they pull up that water and bring it to the surface. And like I said, that technology was brought with it by Pennsylvania oil drillers. What that did is now, over time, that Ogallala Aquifer, that underground water body, is actually slowly starting to wither away because there's too much being pumped out and not enough refill occurring. I believe this is a photo I took while approaching Vegas, kind of getting closer to Vegas, and showcasing this is not going to be a dense forested area. This is very much a shrub grassland area.